So we'll just start right at 8:45.
Sounds good.
So,
if one of you want to share the presentation.
Sure, I'll do that.
so how did we say we were going to do it, Matt? You're gonna, Glenn's going to throw it to us, and then I'm going to kind of give a little
And
intro.
everybody hears you.
That's fine. It's just Earl. He's our friend.
I need the vendor slide up.
Vendor slide. That one I don't have.
Oh gosh.
I got it. Hang on. Let me get out of full screen.
Good morning, Joel.
That look good, boss?
Yep, that works great. Can you guys mute because somebody's got a whistle? Mr. Sellenbacher, good morning.
So instead of Office 365, can we just make fun of Mark for the next hour?
And Adam. Ted, you're just your chat is set to all panelists. If you want to talk to them, you got to change it to panelists and attendees. All right, so it is 8:45. I'm really excited about this session, which is sponsored by ThinkGuard, Total Data Security. Kevin Fuller is the co-founder and president of ThinkGuard, a Birmingham, Alabama-based organization focused solely on disaster recovery as a service. Over the past 5 years, the majority of his attention has been on local and county governments and how they can help better protect them from the myriad of situations that lead to downtime and data loss. So please visit ThinkGuard in the symposium in the exhibition hall. I hope you guys are enjoying the conference. And now I'm going to introduce our panelists today, or our presenters today. And actually, it's my pleasure. If you saw my my talk earlier this week, you know that I think very highly of the people that I'm blessed to work with, and these are two of them. So I really very, very happy that I can present these two to you. So this is Ted Norris and Matt Dolage. They will be speaking today on a myriad of topics on 365 and some other topics as they see fit. So it's going to be fun. I really look forward to this. So let me hand this off directly to Ted and Matt.
Thanks, Glenn. So I'm going to kick it off. Me and Matt are going to kind of tag team this presentation as best we can. So I'm going to try to start out with a little bit of our story as far as Office 365 goes. So we started about 3 or 4 years ago, before Glenn actually got here. So whatever time that was, we were kind of in the infancy of our Office 365 life. We had been an Exchange 2007 shop for many years as far as email goes. We bought Office off the shelf, just like your mom and your grandma do. We bought a new computer. We bought a Office license. So that ended up being a problem because we had many users with different versions of Office. So that kind of raised a lot of different problems. So that was one issue. Obviously, we needed to upgrade from Exchange 2007 to a more secure version. And you know, one of the things that our previous director, Phil Turner, always talked about was, you know, kind of our 3, well, maybe 4 main applications is keeping 911 up, our payroll, our email, and phones, you know, and being able to move our email into the cloud with Office 365 was a big project for us, and it made us sleep better at night, being able to move that off-site, because we really didn't have a good disaster recovery solution for that. We didn't have a good backup solution for that. Anybody that's tried to back up Exchange on-prem knows that story. So we kind of checked a lot of boxes by moving Exchange online. So we kind of started that project, and you know, me and Glenn are a great team because I'm more of a keep the lights on guy, and Glenn is really always focused on what's ahead and always trying to, you know, kind of push us to do new things and kind of innovate. And that's one great thing about him. And, you know, Matt, with working with SharePoint and Teams and other things, have done a great job moving on through that. So we're hoping we're going to be able to show you kind of both sides of that. I think Matt will agree with me that neither one of us are experts. We have not been properly trained, despite Glenn's best efforts. So some of you guys out there probably know more about this stuff than we do. But what we're going to try to show you is what we do on a day-to-day basis for those of you that maybe are trying to make the decision about Office 365, and maybe give you some pointers on how you can kind of move forward with whether you're in the infancy, or maybe some tips and tricks. So with all that, I'm going to throw it over to Matt and let him start with the SharePoint side of things.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ted. So when we were implementing Office 365, we had some challenges to face as far as introducing it to our users. Of course, a lot of users are normally, they regret change, but the good thing was that with Office 365 Suite, most of the users were familiar with the package that it already provided, the basic software, so Word, Excel, PowerPoint, they all knew that. So then we did a huge campaign letting them know it was coming down the pike. They're going to get all this new Office 365 Suite, but a lot of it will be the same. It'll just look slightly different. And for the most part, because we did that, it was accepted really well. And then we told them we're going to introduce you to something simple like OneDrive. It's a location where you could save your files online and access it anywhere. There's versionings of your files there. You could share it with other users, so that was a plus. But then as we started to explore the other applications that were available, SharePoint came up. And Glenn, our boss, he had history using SharePoint. So the first thing that he said about it was, look, he had a deep voice already, but he said, I want you to introduce that slowly. You know, I don't know if it's maybe just how he said it or just how he normally talked, but that kind of, you know, that was part of my memory. So I was like, okay, you know, we'll go ahead and introduce it slowly, because he didn't want to overwhelm the users. And so we thought, how could we introduce this to everyone? And we figured we can go ahead and use it as our intranet platform. Before moving to Office 365, we already had an intranet. It was very, very, it wasn't used a lot. We had a different app that managed it. We had a host, so we paid an annual cost for it. And we used that justification to get rid of that to move to Office 365. So we figured, okay, well, we don't have an intranet anymore. It was used in the past to access most commonly used files throughout the county. So safety reports, incident reports, any kind of forms and templates. Those were all available there. But most users didn't even know about it. The only thing that was pretty much happening with it was probably maybe like the word of the day that would rotate every day. That was like on an auto-generated thing. So we got a hold of all the users that were involved with uploading documents to our previous intranet. We showed them what SharePoint could do, and they were really excited about it. We wanted to ask them, well, how would you like this to be stood up? And they said, we wanted to go ahead and be able to put announcements up there. We wanted to move away from having to send emails out to everyone. We wanted to access the same files that we needed before, but we had trouble looking for them. We needed to find that better, and we needed a calendar. So we went ahead and did that, and this is what it looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and try to flip over my screen here. Okay. So
and Matt and Ted, I'm going to be keeping my eyes on the chat and the Q&A. So as questions come up, I may interrupt you.
All right, sounds good. So this is what we came up with on SharePoint. Now, right now, this is our old site. This is our version 2 site. It doesn't look very visual appealing. And I promise you, when we first rolled this out, it was very well organized. And the reason for that was it met the needs when it first came out that everybody wanted. But kind of how we marketed was that we put it together, and we even gave a SharePoint site that was connected to the intranet. It was like a hub to all the departments. We showed all the capabilities that SharePoint could do to everyone. So they were getting really excited. We told them you can make your own surveys, you can make your own lists, you can put your own files here and share it with other users. You can do like these promoted links on the screen here that can kind of advertise any new projects that you all are working. And they were getting very excited. They were coming up with ideas how they can use it. We really pushed that you can access it off your phone and access it anywhere. So they took it and ran with it, and then it fell short. And this is kind of what happened. We kind of gave this to our media, and it's not their fault. The reason for that, what we failed to realize was how difficult classic SharePoint was to use. As you would add items to the site, as you would add these web parts, if you would move them around, you couldn't just copy and paste them, or they may delete and erase. So you would have to try to undo it, and sometimes that wouldn't work. They would just disappear on you. So this is pretty much the result of that. We had all these great ideas of what we wanted it to be, and it just ended up being spread everywhere. You can see items being pushed off to the side of the page. Everything's kind of stacked, so it wasn't formatted very well. And same thing happened for the department sites. Users were starting to make their own sites, and then that kind of fell short. So then as new apps were being released to us in our government tenant, we started to look more into groups, and we realized how It had its own implementation of SharePoint with it, with their modern pages of SharePoint, not classic. And we really liked the editor that was available there, because all you had to do was click on a page and where you would want something to be. It would display the tool panel, and then you just select what item you wanted to go there and edit. And you can move your items throughout the page. Nothing would disappear. It was really good. So we finally learned how we can kind of make like a hybrid site, and this is what it turned out to be. So this is our version 3. Let me go ahead and hide this side panel here. So at first glance, it looks a bit more appealing. The nice thing about this was, as we rolled this out, there was a big change in our government, our community. The culture was changing. They started to put together these think tanks that involved randomly selected employees throughout the county to come up with several ideas of how we can improve communication. And the intranet was one of them. We grabbed some of their ideas and threw that on here, and as well as we made it the homepage for everyone. And you can see right away we have this nice section here at the top that uses a hero tile for a news section, and that changes on a weekly basis. And each one of these has a nice article, nice page. It uses a modern page where you can make these nice articles very graphic, visually pleasing. And then on the right-hand side, we've got an announcement section, and below that, our calendar. Any one of our departments can post to those locations, any announcements they have. The calendar was really nice because they can tie that to their Outlook and update it from their Outlook. Of course, what you're seeing now is just a bunch of Board of Commissioner meetings, but of course, due to the pandemic, we had to cancel a lot of our events, unfortunately. The commissioners had a section. Even you can click on their profile and see how you could contact them. It was very interactive, see their bio. We could embed our Twitter feed and any of our promotional videos from YouTube. We can just post them here, and you can click on them and play them. And I just wanted to mention these YouTube videos are really good. If you have some time later, I recommend checking out our YouTube videos on county YouTube videos, just because I say that because each one of these are like little blockbuster videos. Our media specialist, Chad Ray, he's really good at using really dramatic music or inspirational music to get the message across. And it's not like any of those like cheesy PA videos. I mean, they have their place, but I mean, he makes really good use of video editing, and especially our drones. So if you want to see how drone footage is being used, I recommend checking out our videos for ideas. But so this became a really good hub for all of our ideas, a one-stop shop. You can see useful links on the side, our budget, our popular documents that I mentioned before, our timekeeping software. You can submit a help desk to us, to our help desk system for any IT-related issues.
Hey, Matt?
Yes, Glenn.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions.
Sure.
Chris Smith from Lexington wants to know if there's a water cooler section where employees can communicate with each other without the use of email.
That's a good question. That has come up before. We haven't established that quite yet. But no, that is something that we've talked about, putting up some type of message board. Each department has the option to do that for themselves, because it's more for like the larger departments like DSS or public safety, where everyone has their own staff-only site. I was going to get into that a little bit more later, but they really liked how this started to develop.
We had another question from Earl. Do we use Stream yet? He says, if not, it's awesome.
We slowly have started to use Stream. The nice thing about us, one of the positive things that came out of us working from home due to the pandemic was we were doing a lot of in-house classes, and we did that through Teams. And at least from that, we were able to incorporate Stream. So. And
Jeff Wilson and Earl also have another question about anonymous login. I'm going to push that one out till Ted does his part, because you'll see that. And then the G3, E3 licensing mix and match. We are doing some, I'll do this one because it's kind of where it falls in my purview. We are E3s and are like housekeepers and the people that are mowing grass for the parks and stuff. They have a mail only license, web mail only license. We do have some a la carte licensing for Power Apps. We also have it for Skype conference lines. We have a couple of Skype conference lines which we use. All right, so I'm going to hand it back off to you, Matt. Thank you.
Can I just say real quick? As far as the water cooler thing, that's a question we'd love for anybody that's on the chat. If they've done that before, we'd really love to hear about it. That's a question we've had going all the way back to intranet version -5.0. That something like that, or even like classifieds. Wanting to sell, whatever, your grandma's, couch or something, so that's something we've been asked for, and, kind of tried to come up with a way to do it. And it always ended up, somebody trying to sell drugs on there or something, something crazy. So we'd love to hear if other people are doing that.
It looks like Chris and Sylvia have, so maybe we'll reach out to them later on. And
all right, so I'm going to continue on. Continue to send questions as you have them, or comments. So like I was saying, this became a central hub that everyone's accessed, and is starting to get very popular. And it was a lot, especially because it's more visually appealing and more informational. You can see on the right side, we used most commonly accessed apps, or what may involve a lot of employees. So we had our county holidays. We implemented the solution section that was anonymous, so any comments or recommendations could be submitted there, because we wanted to be a lot more open. We had a section that would display new hires, so you know who was new in their pictures, as well as who has left or promoted. So that was available. And then, like I mentioned, with those articles, we were able to develop really nice visual articles here. So kind of when we rolled out the new intranet site, we kind of showed where everything was located and what you can do with that, and the capabilities of how to do that, as well as our calendar of events being a lot more informative, where you can add attachments, things like that. So that helped kind of educate everyone on what they could do with SharePoint. And we also use it as a platform to we have our disaster ready team that kind of activates anytime there's an incident in our area, especially with hurricanes. Some employees would just be thrown in the role and they wouldn't know what to do. So we had this onboarding site to kind of educate them on that. Like, this is what the disaster ready team does. This is who's in the group. Here's our emergency operation plan. Any FEMA forms, all that information was there. Here's how to protect yourself and prepare yourself if something does happen, as well as your family. So that was all there. And we were starting to branch out how we could use this more. We're going to use it for a safety committee. And this is received very well. Our departments took this. We ran with it. Our DSS, they're using it for their employees, so they can show what for their birthday calendar. Our new employees, they have several hundred employees, so they just to show this is what our new employees' hobbies are. This is where they came from. That type of information. Even our sheriff department and our airport, they ended up adopting this and really adding different groups with it. And to kind of show you how ours looks right now, this is what all of our other departments see. One of the challenges that came up was, well, for departments that actually service other departments, this was useful for them. But how about those departments that really just serve the public? Why would we put anything here that wasn't already on our county website? So there was as we had those think tanks, one of the things that came up from our surveys that we sent out to everybody was not a lot of our employees knew what other departments did. So right before the pandemic hit, we were really trying to start to use this to where those departments that really were public facing could do some kind of video or campaign and post it on their intranet site. So that was still in the works. But for us, since we were more service-based, we pretty much had just links to different things that employees could access. So our help desk system, if they wanted to fill out a form for borrowing equipment, our contact information. Below that, any media coverage, as well as we put together this page that was really advertised on the front of our site, our intranet, when we were starting to work from home. When the COVID started happening in North Carolina, we started wondering, like, you know, it looks like everyone's going to have to work from home. Let's try to explain to them what their options were, so that, you know, you could use your laptop. If your laptop was not similar to your desktop, we could outfit it for it. We have some spares. Did you know that you can do all of this with Office 365? And then, as well as, you can take your desktop home. We can give you the VPN connection, and we can even put a soft phone on your desktop, so that if your desk phone rang at the office, it rang on your computer. So, and then below that, we pretty much had like a long list. I'm not going to go through it, but a long list of web-based apps that they may not have realized that they didn't need a VPN connection to access. So we really pushed that out. So there's been all kinds of ideas of how we could use it. And one big thing was for our staff-only site. So just as we use the intranet for a hub for everything, for all kinds of county information, we decided to use that for our ITS staff site, for our resources. We've always struggled in the past of how we never had like one central location for all of our information. Our help desk solutions, our how-tos were either in a file share or up in our help desk system. Our files were in 3 different places. Our DR, our disaster recovery notebook was in 2. So we decided to put that all here, and this is what we came up with. So right away, you see our help desk solutions. Our emergency contacts is visibly available on the page. We got our document cloud in one location. And then our most commonly accessed links, that are most important ones, like for our server environment, any security related links, Office 365, any of our critical support links, that's all from right here. This is the first thing that you see. And on the right side, any of our systems. And that serves several purposes, because of course, if we're at our desk, we have all our favorites, it's good to go. However, as we would get these new systems, our sysadmins would, or whoever the expert was for that system, would kind of throw that into Teams or into emails, and we would probably put it into our favorites, or we would just ignore it. I mean, not intentionally, but, you know, we would miss it in the chat chain. So we started grabbing all that and putting that here. And the nice thing about that is as we had new employees, this would be their quick onboarding. They can grab all that information here, as well as with SharePoint being mobile. All we had to do was take this link and make it as a shortcut on our phone, as well as we even did some type of redirect with our county website that automatically you type it in, you know, our county address, you type in after the slash a certain address, and it takes you here automatically. You just log in. So that was the neat thing, it was accessible on your phone. So if you were with a customer, you needed to know how to fix something, you go to our help desk solution from your phone, and there you go. It's all available at your fingertips. So, you know, just going down the page, we use it as an additional portal for our news, any new information that came up, our training sites, any system shortcuts that was web-based, our disaster recovery, our notebook, and of course, as this came about, we started using Planner for our projects. But let me jump into our help desk system. I'm probably taking up some of Ted's time here. So this is what our help desk solutions page kind of looks like. It kind of, we currently use Samanage as our help desk tool, and it is really nice, but there wasn't a way until recently they started adding categories to any of your solutions. So however you fix things, but it wasn't really well organized. So we decided to use this for that. And all you have to do, you can see that it's organized by like key solutions. Most of our critical items like dispatch or public safety software or any malware phishing items are at the top. Software and hardware, and it goes down even like down to programming items, components. But let's say if you had an Outlook issue, you just find it and click on it. It would automatically go to our help desk system. And let's say we had a threat with a potential spam, we just find that. And all this would come up, we can tag all of our solutions. And you can see this; these are all tagged by Outlook, and you could do multiple ones if you wanted to. But this one right here, this is how it looks. Okay, we need to kind of strip email, this one spam that went to everyone's inbox. And like Ted, pretty much he just sent an email on it, and all I did was copy and paste it in here. So he's going to go over that a little bit more later. But that was the benefit of it. And kind of what the game changer was of course, if you realize I didn't have to log into this, we've implemented Idaptive. It is a single sign-on solution. So just like on the phone, as long as if you log into our Office 365 tenant or Samanage one time, it keeps you logged in for the week. So it kind of branched that over so if I click on this within SharePoint, our help desk solutions, that's how it was able to stream flow very nicely into our help desk system. So that was the nice thing about that. And the other benefit was that we really didn't, unless you're opening up Excel or Word, we didn't even have to download SharePoint to our phones. We just needed that link. Same thing like if we were on our home computer when we were working from home. If it was all web-based through Office 365, we really didn't need to download anything. It was all web-based, and Idaptive took care of the rest. So,
hey Matt.
Yeah.
You know, I will say this makes it easy for the least technical among us to be able to do things. And when I say least technical, I'm referring to me. But the other, we have another question. Somebody had to take a phone call and they asked if this would be recorded. Yes, this is being recorded and will be available after the conference. And then Earl wanted to know, what challenges do we run into moving file share data to SharePoint in relation to file types, Esri data, EXE, ISO?
Initially, a lot of our users try to put everything into SharePoint and OneDrive, and of course, they learned right away that there were files that they couldn't add on there. And right now, we still kind of use, and I'll let Ted chime in or Glenn, because they probably have a lot more experience with it, but they are keeping our network file shares at the moment for those needs. So did you have anything else to add on that, Ted?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's one of Glenn's favorite sayings, and I'll probably botch it, but you know, don't let perfect get in the way of pretty good. And I think when we started this, you know, our goal was, you know, we're gonna do away with our file server and everything's gonna be in SharePoint, and that's the way it is. And guess what? That ain't the way it is. So you take certain departments have, and that's kind of been our our game plan, is let the departments drive it. So our planning department has done a great job of moving their data, their file share, just like most of you guys. You know, we've got a file server with department folders set up so they can share files and that kind of stuff. Their file share was a mess. You know, it had stuff from that was 15 years old and nobody had ever touched, and it was unorganized. And they took the opportunity to use SharePoint to kind of get all that straightened out. And they, you know, of course, they've got a lot of people out in the field, so SharePoint was the perfect solution for them. You know, for a department that's stationary, you know, it doesn't really make sense for them to use SharePoint. They don't ever need the data outside the building. You know, a file share might be the best answer. So we've kind of taken the approach of whatever tool works best is going to be what we use. I think For us, like we have a share with software and stuff. I mean, to me, it would be silly to try to move that to SharePoint because, we want to try to install software from SharePoint. So I think we're probably always going to have our file server with certain departmental shares on there, but we encourage our departments, if it makes sense, to move their stuff to the cloud or SharePoint.
So Matt mentioned something before, Ted, about deleting emails and then Idaptive. Can you dive into some of that?
So Matt, are you done?
Oh, sorry. Just about. I'll just show one more thing because
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. So of course we're looking to see how we're constantly looking into how we can explore this further. Just the one last item that I wanted to show you is we've just started to incorporate Power BI into it. When we first got SharePoint, Glenn always wanted to kind of see how users can kind of look up their computer and try to see how when they're getting a new device. And this is a work in progress. This involves Power BI. It's not fine-tuned quite yet, but eventually we'd like to get it to where employees can just type their name and then find out when their warranty's up to get a new computer. So, and also we've been using this on the programming side to house all of our scripts, because the modern pages allows you to have this nice way to display scripts. So, and that's all I have. I'll pass it on over to Ted.
Very cool, Matt. I think Glenn will back me up on this. But I think what you guys just saw, first of all, I think this is really cool. And I think it's an example of what happens when you give talented people kind of the tools and the freedom to be creative and just kind of let them go. And, me and Glenn didn't say, hey, Matt, go build this site and make it do all this stuff. He and, a couple others from our department kind of came up with all this stuff on their own. And we think it's awesome. So good job, Matt. All right, so let's see if I can figure out how to share my screen. Can you guys see me? Shake your head if so. All right. Yeah. So now we're going to move into the crash and burn section of the presentation. So I'm going to roll you through a couple of live demonstrations on a couple of different things we can do with Office 365. One of the main things that Glenn wanted us to concentrate on was improving the user provisioning and deprovisioning of our new hires and people that are no longer with us. I think everybody listening knows kind of the problems with that. Our initial, well, not initial, but our process for doing that has changed over the years. We used to get an Excel spreadsheet from HR and basically create them from scratch. And then we would have to go, when it was on-prem, we would just have to go in and create the mailbox, just like everybody else knows how to do, I think. When we moved to Office 365, we were using AD Sync, AD Connect, whatever they're calling it now. And the process, we were in a hybrid environment, and we still are in a hybrid Exchange environment. So we would create the user in AD, then create the mailbox locally on our on-prem server, and then migrate that mailbox up to Office 365, and then have to do the licensing and all that stuff. So it was a pretty painful process for each user, especially if we were getting a lot of new hires. And it kind of varies with us. We're a medium-sized county, so we might get 15 to 20 new hires in a week, depending on what's going on. So after a little while being on Office 365, we decided we wanted to move into an identity and access management solution. So we went through a kind of a long process trying to figure out what the right choice was for us. And we're already using a company or a solution called Centrify for sign-on access or Active Directory integration into our help desk system. So Centrify kind of spun out into Idaptive, and that's what we use today. And I think a couple of you guys may be on that. I know I've talked to a few others that are using Idaptive, but it works pretty good. It's really helped our provisioning process, and we're hoping to use it more for. We really want to roll all our applications into that, and that's something we're actively working on. So what I'm getting ready to show you is hopefully about a 2 to 3 minute process of creating a user and having them show up in Office 365 with a license. So here we go. So the first step would be to typically we copy users to create a new one. So we will come to our domain controller and create a user. And one thing we really want to do once we get a little bit further down the line is kind of create scripts for our HR folks to be able to do this. We really think that can happen. I know other counties are doing that, or having triggers from their HR system to create these users. So that's something we definitely want to do. So once you have the user created, basically we would come down here and type in what their email address would be. And then this SMTP, we have to enter this proxy address. Again, we could script all this if we wanted to, but we don't. So once this user is in here, then Idaptive is kind of actively looking for changes to Active Directory. So I'll bring you over to our Idaptive connector. And hopefully we can see, this is pretty much all it is. It's a little client that runs on this server, and it's constantly monitoring AD for changes. So whether we can see this or not, I want to copy and paste this over in Notepad. Oops. But you can see kind of how it's checking for, you can see how this user has, typed in a wrong password. So this helps us troubleshoot login information and that kind of thing. Let me bring you over to the Idaptive interface and let you see what that looks like, if I can see it. We have multi-factor authentication turned on for ITS staff for the Idaptive Cloud. We use the little app on the phone. It works kind of like if you guys use Duo or whatever. It's pretty much the same deal. You get a little notification on your phone and you hit the button. Yeah, sorry, I can't show you that, but I hit approve on this and you'll see it'll kind of just push me in to the portal. So we can see all our users, the web apps. So let me bring you into the Office 365 app and show you how this works. So Idaptive has we basically have federated our Office 365 instance through Idaptive. So we can see that here. We go down to, and this is a kind of a service account that we use to authenticate up to Office 365. So if we go down to provisioning, this is where kind of the interesting parts are. You can see that it knows about the licenses that are available to us. You can see how it's syncing these particular things. When we disable a user in Active Directory, it's going to remove the licenses, which is a big thing. You know, anybody that works with any Microsoft product knows that licensing is a kind of a pain in the neck. So I forgot to show you the groups while we're on the domain controller, but so we created groups for all these different licensing types. And those licensing those groups match to a role in Idaptive. And then from here, we take that role and tell it what license to give them. So if you belong to the group O365-E3, then you're going to get a E3 license or G3 license, whatever they're calling it today. So let's see if we can log in. And you can see with this process, I should have said this before, but you see how it redirects us over, when we go to portal.office.com, when you try to log in using anything at onsocounty.nc.gov, it'll redirect you over to the Centrify/Idaptive login page. And we're here. So guess what? It worked, and I didn't crash and burn. That's great. So it's kind of scary. So let's go back over to the admin side of Office 365, and we'll take a look at that, how it created that user. Sometimes it takes a little while for the mailbox to get activated and all that kind of stuff. But you can see how it gave that Nickel-Jesus Test 4 user the appropriate license, and it's probably in the process right now of building out the mailbox, because that does take a little time. But again, you know, you guys saw how easy that was. Our help desk person is typically the one that creates these users, and you know, it's taken, you know, probably a 15 to 30 minute process. It's gone down to, you know, a minute or two on the domain controller to create those users. So we're really happy about that. Let me show you what the user looks like in the Idaptive portal as well. It does give you some really good information on you know, what's happening in Idaptive. You know, we can see the, you know, kind of user activity in here. And you can also see that in Office 365, and I'll show you guys that if we have time. But, you know, if a user is having problems getting logged in, if they're getting locked out, sometimes we can come in here to activity, and it'll show us what's going on. If, you know, maybe some, you know, we have had instances where their account's been compromised, and we can see from here, you know, okay, well, they're, you know, logging in from a weird IP address and that kind of thing. And you see they're assigned Office 365. For our help desk, we have to add them to a different group for them to go in there. So that's what that side of things looks like. If you have any questions about that, just throw them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them. I guess.
There is a question about an MDM. The question was, do we use Intunes as our MDM? And I said no, but they want to know what we are using as our MDM. If you will speak about that a little bit before you start diving into the mail stuff.
We use thoughts and prayers for our MDM. So we haven't implemented one yet. We do enforce kind of the kind of standard rules when it comes to using, putting mail on your phone and that kind of thing. But we have not implemented an MDM solution yet.
Yeah. Now this Idaptive can geofence and can tell you where the server, where the device is logged in from.
Yep. So, we've kind of gone back and forth, and just like I'm sure everybody, I know some of you guys have implemented them, and those of you that haven't implemented MDM have probably done the same thing we have and tried to figure out, make a business case for it. We just haven't been able to make that business case for it yet. So that's where we're at with MDM. So that's kind of the user provisioning part. Like I showed you a little bit earlier, as far as deprovisioning goes, and this is something that Matt can probably talk about a little bit too. For deprovisioning, we will make changes. We'll disable in an Active Directory, which will remove their license. So that makes it a lot easier if you don't have to manually do that part. I know there's been a lot of talk on the listserv about Office 365 backups and that kind of thing. We do have the in place the litigation hold turned on for all our accounts. That makes it really hard to delete stuff in Office 365. We utilize, so kind of the process when a user leaves us, we will take their mailbox and convert it into a shared mailbox. I'm not sure if it's, well, I don't think it is, but basically you don't need a license for a shared mailbox. So once we move that mailbox into there, obviously we're not using the mailbox and it just kind of stays there as long as we want it to. So we, make sure the permissions are set correctly if anybody needs to see it. And that's kind of what we do with their mailbox. For their OneDrive files, we actually move those into an archive site, archive SharePoint site. And we kind of got the permissions locked down on those. If a supervisor or maybe HR needs to see those, then we kind of pass access over to those. But that's kind of what we do from user deprovisioning side of things. Did I miss anything, Matt? All right, so here's the second crash and burn that I'm gonna try to show you guys. One big thing that we were not able to do, and possibly we were able to do it, and maybe just didn't know how to do it when we were running mail on-prem, but I think probably all of us have been in a situation where a bad email gets through our 14 spam filters, and then you're like, okay, well, what do we do now? And before, we didn't really have an easy way to delete those messages across all mailboxes. So with Office 365, we have this protection site. So I'm gonna basically show you guys how we go in and delete, a possible phishing message across all mailboxes. So this is the kind of the search box, the search tool for all, where you can search for not just emails, but SharePoint files and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna go over to my other screen here and send myself an email from my Gmail account. So just to show you there's no cards up my sleeve, one thing Glenn wanted me to mention is that we actually have given that tool to our HR staff. So when we have public records requests or investigations that they need to do, where before they were pushed that down to us, now HR is able to run those types of reports. So you can see that somebody named Ted Norris has sent me an email saying, "Man, Journey stinks," which I happen to agree with. And, you know, I'm sure people are going to get mad in the chat, but I don't really care. But so we're going to go run a search on that email. So we'll do the date and the subject. And then typically we would just hit this button to select all for all mailboxes, but for time's sake, I'm just gonna choose myself. And we'll hit save. And we'll give it a name because we'll need that name here in a second. So it's going to run a search on my mailbox for that subject on today's date. Now, it's kind of important to make sure that when spammers are sending us those types of emails, they make it so it's hard to search for these things. You know, they'll put an invoice in the subject line. Well, the county's getting 1,000 legitimate emails every day for invoice. So it's really kind of the art to this is making sure you craft the search so you're only catching the emails that you want to delete, because we're going to delete them here in a second. The good news is we're going to make it disappear from the user's mailbox, but you're not really deleting it. You can always come back into here and grab the message. So we could always kind of get it back, fortunately. So,
well, don't stop believing that it'll find it.
Let's see. While we're waiting, this is who you guys are standing up for in the chat. I'm sure. I don't have time to look at the chat, but anyway. I don't like Journey, guys. It's just a thing. Where'd my window go? All right, so we've got one result, and hopefully it's going to show us the right one. One thing we've learned with Office 365 is it kind of things work at their own pace. So that's one disadvantage, I would say. You kind of have to give it time to do things, especially like this. Like when we're adding a license or that kind of stuff, sometimes it takes a little bit longer than you expect. So just kind of have to have patience with it sometimes. I'll bring it over to the PowerShell window. So with PowerShell, we basically have to, all these commands you see up here, user credential, you're passing your credentials on. And then this command here connects you up to the protection site. So this new compliant search action, and then you pass the search name, which is going to be Journey. And then the purge tells it basically to delete it out of the user's mailbox. You can also, I think there's a soft purge option, which will end up putting the email into like the user's deleted items, which we don't want to do for this. So let me see if I can show this. So we see the email there. We'll come over here and hit enter. Time me out there. It's going to ask me if I want to do them all. So hopefully it went pretty fast, but you saw that email kind of just disappeared there. So that would be it obviously takes a little bit longer if you're doing it across the whole organization, but it's an easy way to get rid of those types of emails that you don't want to see in your user's mailbox. We typically will only do that if it's something malicious. Obviously, there's some public records concerns for doing that. Again, you can always get it back, but that's kind of how that works. Do we have any questions, Glenn, that we need to get to? I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, so we did have a question, actually. They wanted to know how a non-fan of Journey had it so readily available in the browser tabs. That was from a Chris Davis. Do we know him?
Who?
Yeah.
Guy that writes really small, I think. Mr. 4-point font.
Yeah, so the persistent question is, will this be available? Will a recording of this be available? And yes, a recording of this will be available after after the conference. I don't know when after the conference, but it will be available after the conference.
I'll also say if any of you guys are kind of in the process of implementing this stuff, all of us are more than happy to help our Nickel-Jesus brothers and sisters out. Got any questions? We're always available to kind of shoot us an email or give us a call, and we're happy to talk to you about the mistakes we made and maybe what we would try a little bit different if we had to do over again.
Yeah, we're really good about discussing mistakes because we have plenty of material. So I do want to clarify a couple of things. Ted mentioned that quite a few of this was my idea. That is actually patently false. I don't have good ideas. I've got a fantastic team that have much better ideas than I. We just ask really good questions. But this, guys, I think this was just awesome. I'm not seeing any other questions that we have not that we've not answered. But I will say, just watching you guys, I get to see you guys do this on the daily. But watching you present it and have it all up, where you see, I'm watching what you're doing on the screen and everything. This was really, really great. Both of you guys had just phenomenal content. So if there's any other questions, here we go. Yeah, I'm recording of the session. Yep. Yeah. So if there's any other questions, we'll be here for a little while, or they will, to be able to answer those questions. We'd like to remind everyone to please go and visit the sponsors, visit the vendors in the exhibition booth, especially ThinkGuard. They're the ones that sponsored this. Yeah, Mark, we can also talk about Kronos sometime. So yeah, they'll be here for questions and answer, and they can definitely help. Oh, did we implement Adaptive when we went to Office 365, or was it done after the go live? Ted?
Yeah, it was after, well after. So we were probably at least a year or two in, right, Glenn? Time sometimes moves differently for me than others, but it was after. But if we had to do it over again, we definitely would start with Adaptive or another solution.
Oh, no, Chris Smith from Lexington. Yes, don't forget to fill out your census. I'm on the census committee here too. So yeah, I thank you for that.
Fill mine out. And my mama's.
Excellent.
Wow.
All right. Well, if there's any other questions, please, they'll be here for a little while to discuss and answer them. If you have any other, if you'd like us to meet with you, our emails are very available. I can't speak for some reason. they're very available, and we're happy to set up anything that we can to help you all. So I hope you all have a wonderful Friday and a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.